Hey everyone, it's Chelsea Van Buskirk with the Heart AF podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. I spent last week at a 3-day conference called Soul Speaks from the Stage, and it was an amazing experience that really got me to connect with my intuition a little bit more as far as when I'm speaking and how to speak from that place of inner knowing and how to connect with an audience when I'm speaking to them face to face from a stage, and how to be able to really strip down these kind of expectations or the notion that I have to have, my whole talk figured out or planned out and scripted, right? It's about speaking really from the soul and really tapping into that inner knowing and that inner knowledge that's within us and letting it come out, right? Like settling in to our space, into our breath, and seeing what's coming through in that specific moment that you feel you need to get out and say to the audience that you're connecting with. And what's really amazing about that experience is I believe that already. Like I believe that when, creators create, when, artists are creating beautiful works of art, when writers are writing and they're in flow, when you're in that flow state, when a renowned speaker is speaking from their soul and speaking clearly with a message of meaning, and when they're connecting with that creative space, that is a space that's coming from our divine connections, right? It's our way that we're tapping in with that divine source. And so such an amazing experience, right? And right up my alley with my spirituality and how I feel about our connection with that divine self, right? That higher self within us and connecting with our creator. So it was an amazing experience, but also terrifying at the same time. I was in a room full of women, a lot of them who are older than me, who I felt were wiser than me, more experienced than me. A lot of women who have had a lot of experience in the corporate world, who have made some big changes and have accomplished a lot more than what I consider to be successful in my own right? Like these are successful women in my eyes. And it was very intimidating to walk into this room of them. A lot of them have known each other. They're in a coaching program together. So I did feel like an outsider in a lot of ways walking in. There were moments of self-doubt, feeling like, do I belong here? Should I be here? Those kinds of things. But as the few days went on, as I got to connect and really get to know these women and hearing their stories on the stage and hearing them speak from their souls, even though a lot of us have different sectors we work in, different expertise and different, life paths and different experiences, we very much had similar stories in a lot of ways. We all had very similar feelings, very similar emotional experiences, right? Like even though the experiences themselves might have been somewhat different, we've had different life experiences, but at the same time, the feelings that we experienced in those different life experiences were similar. We all struggled with appreciating ourselves. We all struggled with feeling like we don't belong or feeling, insecure in a lot of ways, right? Like getting up on stage is a very vulnerable place to be when you're standing up talking to different people. For me, it's a lot easier to get in front of a camera or, speak on this podcast, something like that, because it's just me, right? It's just me and the camera, and I don't know who this message is going to reach. I don't know how people are going to respond. I don't know. But when you're on stage, you're in front of the people who are receiving it, right? Like you're making eye contact with them. So that's a whole different ballgame. And it is one of my dreams to be able to speak love on stage and to be able to make an impact to people from a stage. That's something that's on my vision board. That's something that I would much like to do. I can see myself there. I can see it, but it's also terrifying at the same time. So this was such an incredible experience, like pushing me out of my comfort zone in a lot of ways. But I wanted to go back to this feeling of that insecurity, this insecure place of not feeling like I didn't fit in, right? Because in my mind, pretty much haven't done much with my life. In my mind, comparing myself to these other women who are coming from creating businesses and being female CEOs and rocket scientists and things like that. Like this is the room of women I was around, right? Women who have successfully built these businesses themselves and who have risen to the top, who have climbed ladders and broken glass ceilings, right? Making a difference in equality in the corporate workplace, right? Like they're using their voices and their talents to rise up as women in a lot of male-dominated industries. And it's amazing, it's magical, and it's like awe-inspiring, right? I was awestruck by these women and just, I wish I could do something that meaningful, impactful, right? Again, and we're all like that, right? Like it wasn't just me, like it was the other women in the room too. Like they felt like they were comparing themselves to the other women, like, maybe thinking that they didn't make as big of an impact as that woman up there or that woman over there. But the truth of it is that every single one of us, including myself, have all made an impact and a difference in our own unique ways. And that's one of the things I like to talk about, is this notion that our accomplishments don't equate our worth, right? The roles we play, the titles we give ourselves, that is not what our worth is based upon. And our conditioning, the way that, society kind of frames things, we get that notion that our worth is based on those achievements. Our worth is based on how much money we make or how many, accumulations we have, right? Like it says that success, but that's wrong. That's a wrong idea. And that's something that I'm really trying to break with my message, is that our worth is not based on those things, and that we actually don't have anything to prove because we're innately worthy, right? Like just being in this space, just being alive at this time is our worthiness. We are worthy of being heard. We're worthy of being loved. We're worthy of respect. And I really want people to see that within themselves, because it's really hard. It's really hard. And, I talked a bit on the episode about like the hustle culture and always wanting to feel like we have to push ourselves and, get these accomplishments and hit that next, rung on the ladder to achieve success. But success is really about how we feel about ourselves, and realizing that we don't have anything to prove and that we are worthy. We're worthy of being happy and being joyful, and we don't have to suffer to get that. And I think that's the problem that a lot of us run into, is we feel like we have to suffer in order to receive, or we have to prove, or we have to work in order to receive or feel worthy. And it's bullshit. It's bullshit. We are all divinely and innately worthy just by being here. We all have these unique special gifts, and it's not a competition, right? We come from an abundant place. We come from a place where there are no limits, right? Like we come from this creation space, and we are a piece of that. Like we are abundant. We are expanding, right? And we forget that. We forget that we don't have anything to prove, right? We get sucked in to that conditioning, right? And it's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard to break away from that mindset and that mentality, feeling like we have to prove ourselves, but it's something to just think about and remind yourself of, that you don't have anything to prove, and that every single person is just as worthy and is just as good as everybody else, right? Like, I feel like we get stuck in this competitive mindset where, I'm better than you, or they're better than me, that kind of thing. They have more things than I do, so that means they're better. And that's not it. That's not it. That is false. That is an illusion, okay? Because when it comes down to it, we are all more than what we have. We are all more than the roles we play, right? Like we all have this soul, this spirit piece of us, right? That lives on forever. That piece of us that never dies, that piece of us that's here forever, our essence. That was something we talked a lot about over our 3-day workshop, was our essence, not the content of what we were speaking on stage, but the essence, what we brought to the stage with our essence, right? Our presence. How are we showing up? What is it that we are bringing to the stage without even saying anything, right? And that's something I would love for every one of you to take a notice at. Like, what is your essence? What are you giving to the world without having to say anything, without having to do anything, right? Like you just being with yourself, just in your space, right? Like taking up that space and just being you and standing tall. How are you showing up for the world? Because you have something to offer, right? Your smile, holding the door open for a stranger, your presence, your energy, right? What happens when you walk into a room? How does that impact the other people, the other things that are going on in that room, right? Like, how are you showing up? It's a really interesting thing to analyze and to take a look at and to reflect on. We get so caught up, right, in these things we feel like we have to do, we have to prove ourselves. Like, I know for me, I spoke about this a little bit at the event too, is that, my ego wants me to share the things that I've accumulated, or that, me and my husband have built with, his business and these things. And because I feel like that gives me some skin in the game, or that makes me feel like I have something to say. But the truth of it is, it's not. Like, there's so much more to me than that. And it's, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything. That doesn't equate my worthiness. My worthiness isn't about those accumulations that we have. And it's so easy to forget that. And I know when I went to, how I found out about this speaking workshop or this speaking event is I went to this Women's Ignite conference back in November, and a friend had invited me. Had never heard of it before. And again, I mean, this was a huge event, right? Many, many women there. A lot of the women were from the corporate world again, right? And here I am in my small shoes, or how I felt, right? I felt like I was small, like maybe I shouldn't be there. That's how I felt walking in there. I was very, very nervous, very self-conscious. And people would ask, people are just trying to get to know you, make conversation, but one of the first things they ask you is, so what do you do? And I would freeze. Like, I didn't know what to say, because I feel like I'm kind of in this transitional moment, but I would stutter, and I would, kind of ping pong it, like, oh, well, I do real estate, but I'm like not trying to do real estate anymore. And like, I manage our rentals, but like I'm trying to write a book, and I have a podcast, and I don't really know what I'm doing. And so it was like I could never give anybody a straight answer. I just would like word vomit all over everybody that would ask me, because I really didn't know what to say. And it's like I wanted to sound intelligent and smart and say something like that I knew what I was doing, but I really had no idea what to say. And I started to really doubt myself after that first day. I questioned coming back the next day, because I was like, shit, I'm around all these women who are, a lot of them have these job titles that they can just be off, what do you do? And they have something to say. And I felt like I didn't. And I just felt, like, again, like I shouldn't be here. This place isn't for me. Like, I'm in the wrong place. But I stayed and I stuck it out. And the thing I realized is every interaction I had, even though I stumbled with what to say with what I was doing, they were all just, they all just listened and were interested. And, it didn't make me feel like I was small. They didn't, they actually engaged with me and talked with me. And it wasn't that, I found out I wasn't that different from them, because a lot of them were also in transitions in their careers and didn't really know what they were doing either. So there was a lot of like familiarity, or we were able to bond over similar experiences and feelings of feeling like we don't know what we're doing. I mean, that's a scary place to be when you're not really sure where you're going or what direction or what you want to do. And so a lot of these women were actually there, and some of these women like kind of had an idea what they wanted to do, and were here at this conference actually to get better ideas of how they could, grow certain businesses or do certain things. And so speaking and talking and connecting with these women really showed me that we're all not far off from each other as I assumed we were, right? And I think that's the thing too, is we always assume that, we see people's highlight reels on social media, or we see people's successes, and we just assume that, oh, they've got it together, they know what they're doing, everything's great and shiny and bright in their life. But the truth of it is, we all are struggling with something. I mean, just because someone shows up every day and does certain things or is successful doesn't mean that they're not struggling with their relationships at home, right? Like, relationships are hard and they have their ups and downs. Like, people are always going to be struggling with that to some extent, right? Like, relationships ebb and flow. If somebody's going to come out of a relationship, they're going to have, times where things are hard and times when things are great. Like, that's going to be something that's in their mind that they're not like probably coming forward with. There might be family dramas or stories we don't even know that they're dealing with, right? Or grief that we don't know people are dealing with. People who are just struggling with balancing their parents or their kids, right? Like, we never know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know the day-to-day struggles that people are having internally, that they're fighting, like those internal struggles they're going with on their day-to-day life, right? Like, some people might be struggling with depression or, some other kind of not visible illnesses, right? Or maybe they are going through their own like physical health ailments that we can't physically see, but maybe they're dealing with like a cancer scare or abnormal test results from something, right? You never know what people are carrying with them in their day-to-day lives, but they turn that off and they show up in their job, or they show up on social media like everything's great. You know what I mean? Like, you just never know the depth of what people are struggling with internally, with their intimate relationships with their family members or their spouses or their kids. Everybody struggles. And I guess what I want to get to in this episode is just like the humanity of connecting with other people and realizing that we're not so far off from each other than we think, and that no one's perfect, but like at the same time, we're all imperfectly perfect, right? Like, we're all beautiful and we all have these gifts and like this greatness to offer the world just by being ourselves. And what I really am trying to do, I feel like, is really get more intimate and vulnerable with people and connecting and letting people know that you are not alone, and that so many of us are struggling with the same things, and that you're not alone, and there's people there for you. If you just kind of have to open up and be able to share some of these vulnerabilities and connect with people. And sometimes that can be really hard to do when you feel kind of stuck, like you are in this space where maybe you feel like you can't talk to even like your spouse. And I think that's why organized religions and churches thrive so well, is because they offer that kind of community, right? But at the same time, there's sometimes those communities that actually end up shutting you out, right? Like, I've heard stories of that too, where people are struggling with some of these things and they come to their religious group or their community that they thought they had, but there's this layer of like judgment where if you don't fit in this box, then we can't really support you. And that to me is a problem. And so that's something I'm trying to shift and fix too, with trying to build this online community for women to have a safe space. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to fit into a box to be supported. We support you no matter what. And we're not going to try to make you fit. Like, you get to come as you are, and we're going to support you no matter what. And that's something that I'm trying to build. But I just need you guys to know that you're never alone, and that there's more people that are struggling than you might realize. And, my wish or my hope is that more people could rise up and share their vulnerabilities with others, to have these real intimate connections with each other, to see how, similar we really are, and how, there really isn't this I'm better than you attitude, right? Like, I feel like that's just a facade, and really it's just to hide insecurities. And the thing is we're all insecure, right? Like, we all have these insecurities. And really, I feel like when people are trying to show up and talk about their successes or whatever, like, some of it is like, you do need to be proud of yourself for doing things, right? It's great to accomplish things, but at the same time, it's this, we're trying to reassure ourselves, and we're trying to like prove our worth. That to me is what we're doing when we're like sharing these things. We're trying to like validate ourselves in what we're doing, right? Like, we're trying to prove ourselves with the things we do. And, how different could things be if we just kind of took off those like the facade of all that and just like saw each other for who we really are. If you've ever done a yoga class, you always end up with this namaste, right? And there's different interpretations to it, but essentially what it means is that the light in me sees and honors the light in you. And what it's really talking about is like that inner light, this inner light that we all have, that higher self, the part that connect, like, we're all connected, right? Like, if you think of it as like a web, like, we are all connected. We are all one. We all come from the same source. There's a piece of us that is shared in each and every one of us, that's shared from our source, from our creator, and it's connecting every single one of us together. And if we could really take off everything else and just see that pure divine light within each and every one of us, if we could just see that, like, what an amazing world this place would be, right? If we could strip away everything else and just see each other for who we really are, which is that divine light, right? Like our soul or higher selves. There was a beautiful image, and if I can find it, I will link it to the description of this podcast. But it's an image of these two adults. I think it might be a female and a male figure, and they're sitting back to back, right? Like, their backs are leaned up against each other, and they're both crouched with their, kind of hugging their knees in this angry, sad, upset kind of state, right? And they're both looking away from each other. Their backs are faced, but they're back to back. And inside of them are children, and the two children are putting their hands up to each other like this, facing each other, right? It's almost like you're seeing that within each one of us is this inner wounded child, right? That we're all just these beautiful, innocent children inside, right? That just want to be loved, just want to be seen and accepted for who we are. And we grow up as these adults putting on our masks and these walls to, to toughen up and to like shield out all the hurt and pain, and then we're suffering alone instead of realizing that internally we are all these little children that just want the same things. So that's the image I want to leave you guys with this episode, is that we're really not that far off from each other, right? And the next time if you find yourself walking into a room of people you think that maybe you don't fit in with, or that you're feeling less than, to remember that we're all just the same, right? We're all just wanting to be seen, wanting to be loved and accepted for who we are. And the realness of it is you've got to accept and love yourself, right? It comes from loving yourself and realizing that inner divinity that's within you, and then seeing that in everyone else. I hope this hit something with you, or at least got you thinking. I would love to hear from you. Let me know if this episode resonated with you at all, if you got anything from it. I love getting the text messages and the DMs. I'm not going to give out my number publicly. That's just for personal friends. But if you want to give me a DM on Instagram or Facebook, that's where I'm at mostly. Just slide in my DMs and let me know, share with me anything that you took away from this episode, because that's what pumps me up. It keeps me showing up for you guys every week, and it motivates me to keep showing up for you and speaking what's in my soul. And I appreciate all the support and love. Like, I hope you know how much that means to me. It's amazing. So please, I love the feedback. I hope you guys had a wonderful week. Stay beautiful and strong, and know that you are amazing and worth it, and that you have this amazing divine light that's within you. Let that light shine, my friend. Let it shine. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.